You can't learn if you always work in your studio. You should move from the studio into your site to learn. And I think that's very important. For details that are evolved by visiting the site, visiting the reality, the real ground.
Can a building be a permaculture of solutions? It doesn't just provide a shelter for work or for stay, but can it give something more? An element which is there in every structure, a terrace, becomes a productive element. It gives you food, it gives you energy, it gives you water, it treats your waste, and then adds to the biodiversity.
How do you generate quality for people? I feel if you generate quality for human beings, you will create quality for nature, and vice versa.
And thank you, Pramiti, for this opportunity. So Pramiti has introduced me. So I represent a firm called Biome in Bangalore, and that has been working on ecological architecture for 33 years. Our work addressed urban crises as it developed in the city of Bangalore as Bangalore grew. So be it financial, a very important part of architectural design, be it material, waste, water, energy, etc. And we tried and encapsulated that in this book called Biome Diaries, which was the work of COVID years when the work was less. And we sold out all the books. So, sorry, you can't buy it now till we republish. So, well, I'm not really going to talk about our work. We have a website, we have a Flickr site. Please see that. I think there is enough and more written also about it, and the ideas. So I don't want to be talking about our work. And I think that's a feminist characteristic. We want to be all engaging, and we want to be sharing than just talking about our egos. So let's do it differently now. So, well, the topic given to us was the need for passive design. So the definition of passive design is this. And when did it emerge? It emerged in 1973 in North America. Most of you probably don't know at all about it. When OPEC increased the oil price by 3 times. That's when North America went into a tizzy, and they decided they have to do something about how do they cool or heat their homes. They were happily using the Arab oil, and when the Arabs decided to increase the price, then it changed. So they came up with passive house as the first nomenclature before it became passive design. And then the Germans took it over, and you have the solar decathlons and passive house and more of it. But the oil, which became much more easily available, and the spread of democracy and capitalism brought about changes in the consumption pattern. And we began to look the same throughout the world. Now we are trying to look different. We are trying to be a lot more culturally sensitive, but otherwise we look the same. Even in our neighborhood here. Because it was all possible. We could get glass from anywhere, we could get steel from anywhere, we have manufacturing so much. And the land has to be monetized. And the trend is to move people. So you monetize the land, lovely urban villages. This is in Mahim. But then you want to monetize and move them to this. And this is an amazing study by Ronita Burden, conducted in 2017. And it talks about what happens inside the slum rehabilitation housing in Mumbai. It's my favorite study. So it affects the sleep. These slum rehabilitation houses affect the sleep. And when it affects the sleep, because it's so much more hotter, Ronita measured the difference between ambient and inside. The inside was 10 degrees higher than the ambient, because they were also cooking inside. It's interesting to read the study when, like yesterday, Channa showed the generosity of people to stay, but in the slums or in the urban villages, they were cooking together. There are places where they came out and cooked together, but now you have to cook inside. So here you have one exhibit which shows the interior air pollutant, but similar thing happens in these housing. But this is the 80% of the population which is living in such congested housing. And in 2022, World Bank said by 2037, we will be buying an air conditioner every 15 seconds. You can say anything about passive house. We architects can design with courtyards and thicker walls and wood and earth that we use, but sorry, if we don't look at this ecosystem, if we don't look at the city, if we don't look at the bylaws, the way we are designing, which have to move from the ecocentric to ecosystem-centric, we will surely kill the planet. But the capitalist economy says we can make more money by making new kinds of air conditioners. So it's very happy that we'll be buying an AC every 15 seconds, we can make more money. So this is how our minds work. It's so short term. These are what's called tyranny of small decisions. You take a small decision, it's just me with one AC, then another person takes, and then another person takes. And then it is big climate change. So what is the desirable future? One of it is cool interiors are the human right. And how do we go about it? Is it only through built envelope, or is it through looking at it in a social and ecological and a global perspective? In sync with the aspirations So, can a building, we are architects, so we're looking at, I can only talk about a building. So can a building be a permaculture of solutions? It doesn't just provide a shelter for work or for stay, but can it give something more? Because now we are dealing with a very different and new crisis, which doesn't have solutions in the history and not in mythology too. So don't go by that, okay? Don't look up that some mythic story we were great. No, we have to now look at science and data, which is available for us. Because rising heat impacts many more things, not merely the building, it impacts our food, our air, our biodiversity. So can the buildings address more than merely a shelter? So this is what we do when we make a building. Kai said it will come from 100-kilometer radius to build that city. Well, I've been following Mr. Ken Yang for past 25 years. When his first book, Designing with Nature, came out, and I follow the last few pages. I don't think Ken is able to hear what I'm saying, but yeah. Okay, he waved, yeah. And we follow that to the T. in many cases, yeah. But now we need a very different narrative. And like I said, it's not possible from history, but from science and data. So I'm going back to the basics. How much land does one person require for living essentials? For water, food, energy, shelter, and air. For water, and I'm taking Bangalore's perspective. I come from that city, I know its data, and I'm more comfortable when I take that. So let's talk about water. We just require 3.25 square meter per person to harvest the drinking water and to treat the grey water. Next is larger area. We South Indians, predominantly rice eaters, by using ewe manure, we need 33 square meters per person to grow enough rice for our annual consumption. So we close the loop of human waste and food. For energy, using solar photovoltaic for lighting and fans, and for solar thermal, just about 2.75 square meters. Yeah, it's all numbers. Huh? No pictures, unlike other architects. It's all numbers. Get it? Sorry, that's what I would like to speak. Because I want to share this with you, and I'd like feedback, and I'd like more people to work on such an idea in different cities. Moving on to materials for building. If we excavate an area of 20 square meter, we go down by a meter, and we don't even take the first 300 mm, because that has the best humus, best soil for growing food. If we use the rest, we can build a home. Per person, we just require 20 square meters. And make a home which is about 4 meter high, which is partly underground and partly above ground. Take care of the diurnal variation in Bangalore, but my future city is, especially in the hot, dry regions of the world of South Asia, to be predominantly be underground. So, an element which is there in every structure, a terrace, becomes a productive element. It gives you food, it gives you energy, it gives you water, it treats your waste, and then adds to the biodiversity. A city, most of it in South Asia, looks like this. It could become an ecosystem. An ecosystem which is positive ecosystem, not merely with some palm trees and stuff, but something more, which gives you food, and that food need not be for yourself. It's for the larger biodiversity. So we grow rice on our terrace, we grow ragi on our terrace. Most of the time we don't get them. We hear the rodents walking and consuming it. And it's good that rodents have something else to consume rather than they consume the waste. And there are a lot of zoonotical diseases which would be now then on the rodents rather than on humans. So that's for another day when I learn more about it. And so the city becomes part of the ecosystem. Then I'm asked, is it possible really in a city? How do you scale such an idea? So I took it, again for Bangalore. That's the area in 2022, 11 million population, we have become to 13 million now, 440 square meter is what the terrace area which we would need. But the built area will need only 220 square kilometers. So, as per UN Habitat's global urban observatories, you need 40% 40 to 50% as open space for roads and parks and other things. And that's possible. With just, if we start looking at designing 40 square meters per person for habitation. So this is a question back to you. What is that yellow square? Virendra says it's for 1.2 billion people, Indian population. That's just the area needed. Sorry, you're wrong. For the whole world. So we have enough in this planet. We just need to know how to apportion it, and the future is sharing, caring, and cooperative living. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Verendra Wakhloo. He's our principal architect of Matra Architects and Urban Planners, New Delhi. Virendra's 20-year-long stay in Germany from the age of 10 exposed him to the high technology-driven society that spilled into his architectural education. Inspired by Charles Correa, B.V. Doshi, and U.C. Jain, he returned to India in order to search for that elusive Indian identity, which influenced his initial work. Today, Virendra has successfully worked across very diverse design and architectural projects across 3 decades. Virendra, I won't say more, but we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. A special thanks to Pramiti. Initially, I didn't know why I should be here. I must admit, because our work is not entirely focused on sustainability. Sustainability in the sense it is presently marketed. I think it's not. Architecture, in my opinion, therefore, these lines are not about tick marking certain aspects that make good buildings. I don't think that in the past, vernacular architecture and architects and builders all across the world ever looked at sustainability as an issue. They looked at building good buildings. And I remember that when I would see as a first, second year student work that was published in Indian magazines, like Inside, Outside, I don't know what was happening that time. I would see buildings soaked in water with fungus on it and insipid buildings. And then I would see also very under-designed, undervalued building as against, and that's generic, not Charles Correa's or Doshi's work, but the generic architecture had that impression on me. So during the study, I decided to focus a lot on construction, on building properly. And I feel that is what the entire work journey of nearly last 40 years has been. I'm glad that Kai Uwe presented a very, I may say that, pardon me, a very heroic picture. That's like Shah Rukh Khan moving here probably. You need that also because it elevates it motivates to live, it elevates to look and have hope. Then we had Chitra. She also tried to elevate. In fact, I would love to work with her and get her mind on our projects to reach a level of maturity that is in dire need. But both actors are there. We have Manoj Vajpayee and Shah Rukh Khan. And I feel we are in the city of course, Bollywood. So I felt, in fact, and this is more a conversation because this was not supposed to be a presentation first, but a conversation with Kaivan Mehta. But I see that most of the presentation, especially architects' presentation, are created by mind. I find this topic of mind very interesting. Osho says mind is like the monkey. It keeps on jumping everywhere. It argues in all kinds of ways. But what about the body? After all, architecture is made for the body and the experience of body. Now, body is not quantifiable. I can put diagrams. I can prove you that everything is honky-dory. But that's only at the quantity level. How can I, on a screen like this, demonstrate and convince you that the quality of the architecture is good? I live in this dilemma. Best is certainly you go and experience it. I think that's the foremost interesting part in architecture. You should go and see it. Unfortunately, I can't do that because we dwell mostly in private sector. And so there is a bit, and architects get carried away, by visuals. We love it when somebody renders, and nowadays, of course, our instruments are so advanced that your renders are so convincing, and you go for it. Now we'll ask here everybody, will somebody marry a man or a woman based on the looks only? No, probably not. Could be a disaster. You will go for more qualities. Now, how are these intangible qualities perceivable in architecture? How do I demonstrate them? So I've tried to do a bit of that. And, what I feel is the larger goal of architecture and environment engineering, if I may say so, is that you are transforming it, but in hindsight also you get transformed. So we have a kind of dualistic process there, a very dynamic process that goes back and forth. During my growing years, this was the master. Everybody has a kind of confidence-building hero. For me, he was the Shah Rukh Khan. And because I was into art myself, and I felt he motivates you to do crazy things because you have aspirations. Now, few years back, I discovered something very beautiful, which Chitra hinted at a little bit. This is the ID exhibition, a typical exhibition in Delhi, which has the 3 halls, and the halls are designed in this pattern. I think this is art exhibition, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is art, not the ID. The art exhibition in Delhi, and it is about what I call the body and the intellect. That is the game between here that will be presented. Now, this is the way you would explore this exhibition of art. You will create a matrix. I go from one number to the other number and so on and so forth. So I develop a mental grid. This grid is what we are doing to our cities today. New York is based on that, but the beauty of New York doesn't lie on the grid. It lies actually on this, the conversation. Now what happened? From point 1, which is bottom right, I get a call from my client. The lady says, she's my client, and she says, Viren, why don't you come over? I have a beautiful stall from the Delhi Crafts Council. You have to see that. I'm buying few of these. So I moved to the point 2, and point 2, I meet another friend with her who says, let us go to point 3, where we have Veer Munshi's installation of art. From there, we have to go for the toilets. Then we go further to some other place, maybe food. We go to the BMW stall because they promote that. I'm just demonstrating here the reality. This is actually, and I call it therefore, the dialogue, the feminine, and the exposed. And it started, maybe it's not a coincidence even, that the dialogue starts with a woman and not with a man. I may be a little biased, but I have to exaggerate that part a bit. Not all guys are the same. Not all women are the same. But I think there's an inherent quality in the feminine and the masculine. The other aspect that we find in our office as a process, very important, because I deal with one-to-one with clients, one-to-one with my people, our scope of work is very limited, very, very small. So what we do is we tell each other stories. I have people from villages who work with me, somebody from Agra, somebody from Sonipat, And they have their own little stories. Now, if you carefully listen, these stories convert while you're talking into a sketch. The sketch converts into a typology. I may call it typology. You could call it also the archetype. The generic order of all beginning, that's the archetype. The stepwells are archetypes, the temples are an archetype, the seed, that is very important. So we have to create, after we have established a set of values for ourselves, we have to create a diagram. This is the diagram. The diagram is actually the interface in architecture between, I'm talking to very young people, therefore I'm mentioning that. I feel that very important because while we are designing, we think this is a black hole, or whatever you call it, black box, yes. I don't think design is black box. I think it is just the opposite. It is actually very tangible. But it is only tangible if you have people who are in conversation. This is a table that I designed. I was telling material and construction for me were very important in the second year. So I discovered that this Nestle also had this drafting table the engineers used. Some of them they belong to this period, with springs and all that, very clumsy looking. Engineers still use it in the... I need to hurry. Do I need to hurry? No? There's a way out. They should put a cover on their watches. As simple as that. Okay, I will quickly go through this. Finally, it has to be a synthetic. Oh, no. Don't worry. I'll go very quickly. So I'm talking today about 3 types of projects. We have done, of course, many more, but because of the time frame, I have the urban systems. I call it a system now in the macro ecosystem. Then the industrial and the Himalayan zone. For Himalayan zone, I could have put it, you see already the language. It's not a system. There's something else that happens in the Himalayas. And all of us work within a microsystem. Now, there are microsystems that are timeless, that are beyond human scale and time, that is climate. But there are others that are always in move. We saw that with Kai Uwe also, material skills, technology, and the resources. Then, certainly, we have aspirations. I think the aspiration one are the one that drive us. Honestly, in our case, in our work, the aspirations are assembling architecture, that is more of industrial nature, the way you put things, or you have casting and sculpting. I'm very fond of building like sculptures. I'm very, very fond of it. I like that because I have my liberty to negotiate then around. We are infamous for doing a lot of exposed concrete work, and on one initially, you may think these concrete buildings are not insulated. They're highly insulated buildings. They're double-wall systems, and the roofing system, all that is in place. Otherwise, I would be jobless today. This is one of our earlier buildings. Now, important in this building is that you are within a 800 square yard or 750 square meter plot. So you're not thinking of a green field. You're working within constraints, forces like the bylaws, height regulations, footprint. How do you generate quality for people? I feel if you generate quality for human beings, you will create quality for nature, and vice versa. For me, there is a kind of dualism there that works in place. We made a building, I'll show you a small clipping also, which is very porous, which is column-free, unlike what we saw in the dominoes principle where you have set of columns which give you flexibility. I think if you let the walls bare and have a central core here, which has the lift and the staircase, you can easily negotiate within the space as the family changes. Very important to have these homes more flexible for people. This is 2 duplets. I will not go, because of time, into details, but it is important that the porosity creates a connection to the neighborhood. I call it the window into the neighborhood, and these things come up with negotiation with clients. Somebody wants a higher ceiling, somebody wants to have something else, and we let it happen within this kind of confinement. A detail that emerged there suddenly, and the detail has a reason, because the quality of concrete in reality, all buildings are made by hand in India. I mean, we may think these are high technologies, but the guy who is in his boot and shoveling the concrete, he's working like a traditional craftsman. He has still the same tools and kits. So no robots, no machines. So when you get inaccurate openings in the window, you opt for, and I think that's very important, for details that are evolved by visiting the site, visiting the reality, the real ground. So you should move from the studio into your site to learn. You can't learn if you always work in your studios. This is a staircase inspired by the hood, kitchen hood, because this connects the kitchen to the staff area, and it floats nicely. This picture we'll quickly show. It's just a minute. I'm allowed to do that. I'll just switch in between. Oops. Yeah. It demonstrates how I create the porosity out of a block, a concrete block. So first I release the stilt area for the parking, which is an issue in Delhi and Bombay, of course, all cities, I guess. Now, bit by bit, I'm doing a deconstruction by removing things. I feel that removing idea is a very powerful idea, that nitya, that by removing luggage, by removing burden, you actually create. It's a very opposite approach to assembling. Therefore, I say sculpting is a very interesting way. It's what the Ajanta caves and the other caves have done. You remove it. I'll quickly now jump because of time problem. Okay. Yes, another project that emphasized now not on the porosity of the building because we had a larger site, but on how do you get an unfavorable site. This is also in Delhi. Most of our residencies are in Delhi. How do you get, if you see the trajectory of the sun, how do you get sunlight in this particular site which has these four little buildings on the right side, the main house? Of course, there's garden and other gazebo and all as a part of the design, but they wanted, and the Vastu person wanted to have the buildings in this corner. It was favorable. So what we did is, we said we'll develop a type. You can see it in the section, the diagrammatic section. You get light from the roof in. So you moderate the light and the brief in such a way that you have an attic. Through the attic, you are getting then the light into the other floors. This is the building, again, well insulated. All the roofs are precast elements. Otherwise, I love concrete, I must admit. This is what you can see as a puncture in the roof. We have some art collections here. This building interiors were done together with Ashisha. I don't do interiors much. I'm not allowed to do it. I'm very frank about it. Because, well, we need Shah Rukh Khans. I am not one. So the strategy of getting light, I feel for good living, light is important. And each and everything, the door, the flooring, everything, the grooves in the wall are being crafted one by one. The idea of the traditional courtyard in the urban densities have been converted here into a double height space and getting natural light into the spaces. Some areas where the textured concrete has this expression, like an art canvas. Another building, I'll run it fast. It has other reasons. We have a lot of stilt in the buildings. Stilt, jungle of stilt, make the whole building look very insipid, not inviting. So we thought we will build, and this has been in collaboration. The interiors were in collaboration with Rajiv Sani. I'm glad that he is today here. I don't know if he's ever publicly spoken about this, but this is a beautiful interior. I must confess that here. And the whole building is sitting on two columns to allow, and of course there are other elements like screening against sunlight and so on and so forth. I will not dwell, but you can see with more pictures. One of my friends from Bombay called it the dancing cubes because they're moving, they're oriented to diverse directions. These are the two columns the whole building is now sitting. Now, the client could now put a garden together because of just the way the cubes were dancing and letting light get in, but also by the number of columns. I know this is as big as a metro column in Delhi or in Bombay, but it solved the matter. I don't have obstruction. And it had a potential to have throughout a garden. A view from inside this building was highly influenced by a visit to Hampi, my all-time favorite place. This is now in Udaipur, and the idea is to emulate the traditional architecture. So we adopted a pre-engineered, a pre-cast building elements. So large veranda, it overlooks a lake. I'll rush through it. But you see, this is a very different typology. The idea is not a style statement. The idea is a method of working. I feel that's what is more important. And I'm talking about methods. This is in the industrial realm where certainly heat is a problem. The cost of the construction, 1,000 rupees a square foot, that's with interiors. So what we used were the upcycling of different materials like crate wood and other machinery. Certainly, generally you get a drab building, but we tried to elevate it for people who are working there. And we dragged the entire aperture that you see now here in the interiors so low that the harsh sunlight wouldn't enter the building, yet you would get a good soft light through a sliver of skylight. Some details, I will not dwell on that. Another farmhouse which became an extension of this approach, more industrial fabrication. You see all these kind of things then. With shingles, nobody had tried in Delhi wood. I tried it and it succeeded. You can use wood. Without that, it turns very, very expensive. A building in the mountains, also on the lines with this production, because in the mountains you don't get good workers and not very fast workers. They take it easy like in Goa. And we tried to use the local wood, different types of wood, from pine to cedar and to sal for different strengths. And what is nice about the building, it is aging now. It is aging, and like Guy Uwe showed, torching wood or not torching wood, it doesn't, in my opinion, make much difference. I would not torch a nice wood. My heart hurts me. It's like taking a tree off. But with time, the weathering itself protects the wood. And you have to just be a little careful that the borers don't enter through these walls. I think that is possible. A view showing a part of the structure, but the view into the Himalayas. Now, interesting is Himalayas look always north, so you have to introduce a skylight. That's what you saw. This is some pictures how the whole thing was constructed, the principle of the structure, which the structure itself reflects on the terraces. So there are many, many issues that you have to resolve. This is now a resort project, and we made a modular approach to it so that the construction can happen downhill and then ferried to the higher. This is now the resort, which is in progress, and the resort has tried to refer to villages. Unlike what development happened, that you have parcellation and you do small, little houses for people, we said the central area should be, like in villages, the market area. Now in resort, there are no markets. There could be weekly markets and all, but bring all that, what is public amenities, in the core, and have the other amenities like houses and homes around it. Some pictures how the streetscapes can look, all that can be pre-engineered and stacked on top of each other. Local materials for various, I don't need to dwell on that. Seeing is believing. Don't believe it though. Fine, I think this is it. I managed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Verendra. Thank you so much. Yeah, come up, please.
Yeah, this is 40 years of work, danced in 15 minutes, and with a white beard. How do you expect that? You should give me more time.
Firstly, I really would like to thank both Verendra and Chitra for joining our presentations overnight for this. Kevan was supposed to be in discussion with them, but he had to drop off last minute. So, and I know we're running out of time. I'd be very happy to open the discussions to the audience. Do you all have some questions, or should I ask them a question or two? Silence.
No questions.
So, Verendra, I'll start with you. I'll just ask you a very basic question. I see a lot of young practitioners here in the audience. If you can tell us, what would be the starting point to thinking of, how to integrate the natural elements with the kind of work that you were doing? You were doing a lot related to energy efficiency, right? So how, when you're putting pen to paper right in the beginning, what is the first thing that you need to think of?
No, I can speak through this. I think the beginning is really an idea, and I compare very often architects with detectives. If I build at a particular site, I have to identify the core issue of that site. Like we saw with Uwe also, Kai Uwe, that say working in Bhutan, there are certain parameters that are dominant to other parameters, right? And I feel, since we don't work on greenfield, it's very rare, most of our buildings are within the city. So for me getting the core issue of that first, and that helps you evolving further the form. For example, in the first house that I showed you, the core issue was, how do I balance? And there was no ecology in place right now. That time there was no ecology, there was no talk immediately of how much light do you get, what is right light. But the issue was, how do I balance open areas and closed areas? In fact, I met at the conclave Bjark Ingels few months back. He had come to Delhi, and I asked him the question. Interestingly, in housing, open areas during COVID became very essential. And in Delhi, people didn't have proper balconies, proper open areas, but they wanted, since they stayed 6 months indoor, they wanted a breakout area. So I feel the idea in a city today, and I think you showed that also, Chitra showed it, how important is actually getting actually the nature in. For me, nature is also that I can step into an open space. See, the idea in a city, I don't know how many people reflect on that. In a city, you don't see a horizon. Never. So if you don't see a horizon, you don't value nature. Why would you value in nature if you have never seen a sunset or a sunrise? You don't see that in a city. So I feel you have to actively, as an architect, get into the direction of getting more importance to nature as a part of your vocabulary. And in words of Richard Rogers, he said something very basic and beautiful. No? He said, every room should have a tree and is ubiquitous. Everybody across the world loves a tree in front of his window. Who will not? So maybe one can start, I think that's what I am trying to say. You can start with small steps, not the large projection. I mean, we have seen with Corbusier, the super large projections of Ville Radieuse, that radiant city in Paris, it went for a toss. People in Paris refused to do that because alienation in your design is the worst strategy to integrate people and nature. I think you have to make people comfortable.
Yeah, that's quite true, actually. Chitra, tell me, Verendra touched upon the fact that during COVID, everyone was stuck indoors and no balconies and stuff. So, also just to take into consideration what's happening around the world with the world is experiencing so much climate change with snow in the Saudi desert or heat in Japan where Mount Fuji wasn't covered in snow for the longest time this year. How would you recommend, or what would you say would be the things to consider in already existing homes or offices? I know if you're building new stuff, you have the opportunity to look into passive design with a lot of intent. But when you're already living in structures, what is your take on that?
Maybe a contrarian take. If those structures are not really working out, maybe you should just demolish them. Because they will give you a lot of materials and a lot of space also. Many of these tall buildings, what's the ground for? For cars, for parking. I think you should demolish them. You'll get a lot of materials. You can repurpose the concrete, you can repurpose the steel and make ground plus 3 or 4, which would self-shade, which would provide water, which would be great place to grow food, bring nature, and great place for children to play too. And this is what I think we have to now start thinking. It's 20 to 27% of existing buildings are providing, the existing buildings are contributing 27% of GHG emission. So they need to be demolished. And let's start thinking new. Let's not look at it like, how do I now repair it? We should be retrofitting it. So that will again require that you have to start a different way of thinking.
And here in Bombay today, if you move around, you're seeing so many buildings being demolished. I just hope they're going to follow your design principles to rebuild and not build in glass.
Well, it's difficult because those who are now building new, they have the wherewithal to pay for the energy, pay for the cost of the material. I just keep thinking, where is this material coming from? So that becomes the real point when we start thinking of design. And it's scary. It's really scary to see the way new cities, new buildings are being shown. And every time you're sitting there, where is this steel coming from? Where is this concrete coming from? Where is the cement coming from? And they are coming from our countries. Our countries are sending the material to Europe and Americas and other countries, where, to be fair, there is absolutely no need for constructing new. They already have a building stock. They can do the passive house. They can insulate and isolate and use it. It's here. It's in South Asia, where we are going to be experiencing the worst of the climate change. And it is here we have to start rethinking. And here we have to think with the ecosystem. We have lost it all. We have sent away our wood. We are still sending away our food and many things. But we have to start thinking within this region. And we have to think differently. And we have to think for everybody. Because in these kind of places, we are only talking about, like he said, and I also do, we are just designing for private. But still 80% live in congested housing, and they will be responsible for the death of the planet.
Thank you so much. I mean, I hope everyone's going to go back and think about this in their own spaces and how they could introduce this in their lives. I think it's extremely important, and hope that we all work towards a passive future, if I may call it that.
May I add something? In extension, I have it. In extension of what Chitra said, I feel we have to recognize simply our own cultural and climatical milieu more seriously. For example, I mean, we all discover as we move in our lives new things, which is, I think, the gift of the architect, because we are meant to observe and learn from observations. For example, the ground floor of a high-rise building, say 6-story in Delhi, where the crown of the trees goes up to 15 meters, maybe a little higher, the ground floor can have a larger opening because I connect to the ground, I have a good shading from the trees. Interestingly, you have lesser light also on the ground because of shading. As you move up, there is no reason to keep this opening. You can, in fact, every floor reduce the opening, because simply the light ingress and the heat ingress in a building, irrespective of what material you are using, the heat ingress in a building as you move up increases, the light impact increases. Let me make a smaller opening. And you have vernacular probably in Tibet and in all those areas where openings, I'm right? The openings are larger at the base and they become smaller and smaller. How easy to make a good architecture. To add to, mass is good. Earth is a mass. It retains the heat. There is a fallacy towards understanding of how heat absorption work. The more mass you have in building, the better, because it absorbs, and once the sky is clear at night, like the crust of the earth, it emits the heat gradually. The trick lies that it has to be gradually. There has to be a time lag. If I do a glass building, like Chitra rightly put across, Gurgaon is full of it, Delhi is full of it, you are invariably doing one thing. You are increasing your heat load. To some extent, you can do triple glass 5 times, 20 times, doesn't make a difference. Still, the heat load would be there. You air condition the place, you are doing two fallacies in this. You are bouncing off the sunlight, which is important for growth on the earth, insects and so on, plants, and you are throwing it into the immediate environment. Addition to that, the heat of the air conditions will heat up naturally the neighbor's building. Poor neighbor, if he has not a glass building, he has to live in an environment that gradually will heat up. So it's ABC. I'm very sure that we have to stop emulating other climate zones. And climate, like human psyche, that's my belief, is timeless. It has always happened. It will always remain with 1 temperature degree up or down, but it will largely remain there. But technology and we can adapt to this, which is, I would say, all the time around us. Please.
Thank you so much. I'm
Chitra
getting messages saying we are running very over time.
Oh, good.
I know there was a question, but could we take it outside? That would be nice. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chitra. Thank you, Verendra.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.